For many years, I understood that the abandonment of my biological father and then the sexually abusive adoptive father of my childhood, these were not reflections of my worth. I understood this, but this understanding, this knowledge of how my psychology worked, how abuse works in the human condition, it did not make the shame in me go away. Not even when I knew the shame belonged to them. Not even when I understood that trauma had tricked me into carrying shame that had never been mine in the first place. I carried the shame that my abusers and those who neglected me as a child did not rightly feel. I carried the shame that they refused to take responsibility for. Once shame grew into me, I then participated in shaming myself as a practice. Not because something's wrong with me, but because that's how shame works in a human. Shaming myself became some kind of twisted way to avoid ever being blindsided by someone else shaming me. So I learned to shame myself first as some false, yes, often even pathetic, twisted, unhealthy, dysfunctional form of trying to control not feeling shame. I brought on more shame because part of being a human with this human condition is that we do what we know, not what's automatically healthy or right or good for us. All humans do this. I required years of careful shame removal, layer by layer, because shame is just one of those things that's rarely extracted in one surgical attempt. And I needed different helpers along the way, different teachers, different experiences to get to different layers of myself, to find different insights. And even still, there were more layers than I ever could have known to uncover. This is just the nature of the shame beast. It's not a failing of me. It's not a failing of little Nikki. It's not a failing of you. This is how the shame beast works. Knowing is not the fix-it that overly academic and heady mental health professionals would like it to be in this Googling information age we're living through. Healing is far more human and experiential than thoughts alone have the capacity to provide. This is why shame release is not available by reading enough books or listening to enough podcast episodes. What I want you to know is that you did at one point as a baby or toddler, you did have boundaries. You had boundaries naturally, and I can prove it. You, like me, as a baby and as a toddler, you honored your natural, innate birthright of boundaries with words, gestures, expressions, body language, by leaning toward or away from many things. You, like me, said no as one of your very first and very favorite words. Many of you said it as your first complete sentence and thought. I got tickled a lot as a child. Nearly every adult in my family was a tickler. And my squirms, my desperate pleas, sometimes with tears coming out of my eyes because they would not stop, were seen as boundaries to override. It was fun to override a child's boundaries. This is often fun for adults with immature emotional intelligence. These interactions taught me that the biggest and strongest person had the power to dictate my experience. And I did, in fact, though I didn't know the word, I sure felt ashamed that I couldn't protect my own body, that I couldn't have autonomy over what my own body was experiencing, that as a little body, a young being, that I couldn't protect my own self from overstimulation and discomfort, that I couldn't make the adults hear me and respect me. Toddlers are unapologetic boundary-setting machines until they aren't, until dysfunction in adults turns a little boundaries badass of a teeny tiny person into a people pleaser with low self-worth. Shame gets added to a toddler's natural boundary process when adults try to control the behavior of tiny humans to their liking. Immature adults do find it funny to override a small child's personhood. They find it powerful to override limits and boundaries. This little being trying to have boundaries when these adults have not. So they poke fun. They override. Immature adults tend to not have a whole lot of power in life. So they overpower, overcontrol, energy vampire others, dominate. Shaming of a young child shuts down individuation. It shuts down permission to be your own being. Shame says you should not be yourself and be like everyone else and hide in the crowd. Don't draw attention. Shaming brings on overthinking and anxiety. Now, all human emotions have utility, I believe, even shame, or we wouldn't have them as part of the range of what we can feel as human beings. Someone who never, ever, ever, ever feels shame is likely operating from a narcissistic and or sociopathic spectrum. We want access to healthy shame. We just don't want daily shame about who we are. My idea of healthy shame is akin to changing the oil in your car. Must be done every now and then, but only a few times a year. Daily oil changes would be an enormous burden, a waste of time, energy, money, resources. It would be completely unnecessary and bonkers to change your car's oil every day. It's just as ridiculous to saddle a little human with shame every day. Healthy shame helps us recognize when we've repeatedly made mistakes as a human being, or if we've intentionally hurt someone, because we have human egos. But daily shame for little things is something entirely different. Daily shame buries us. It doesn't teach us. Daily shame suffocates us. And let's not play around here. The depression and anxiety and suicide rates are out of control in the modern era when we have more access to help and therapeutic language and understanding than ever before in the human condition. Something's falling through the cracks. Shame is likely one of the primary contributors to suicide. I remember asking my Italian grandfather, while he was holding me in his arms in a swimming pool, I was little, if after he died, I could have the necklace he always wore to remember him always. And the look on his face, he gasped and pulled back and said, "We don't talk about someone's death," shaming me for my attempt to have him with me always, shaming me for my little depth that knew he would not be around all of my life. Somehow I understood that at about 5 years old. But because he was scared of death, he shamed me. And it worked. It stopped that conversation. The boundary is almost never the problem. Other people's personality and maturity issues, those are the things that make someone disrespect your boundaries. Immaturity, personalities recreate instead of shed generational traumas and hurts and pains. That was the problem. The felt shame for expressing a boundary becomes a pattern in us. We learned we weren't worthy enough to have boundaries be respected. The shame attached to boundaries is now today a significant problem many of us face dealing with. If we are to heal and truly transcend what was dark or heavy or empty in dysfunctional childhoods. And let me be very, very clear. Those of you who love my work and have followed me for a long time, y'all think there are millions and millions and millions of people just clamoring to do this work. There are not. You are rare. We are rare. We are 15 to 20% of the population. There are 80 to 85% of the people that are not like us, and not every highly sensitive person will do this work. So if you're interested, come find all my stuff, be on my newsletters. You know how that works out here on the internet. I promise you, if shame has been the thing that's been holding you back, there is so much freedom that is available and ready for you. That makes me very excited about the whole rest of your life and what is waiting. When you have trouble believing that for yourself, I will believe it for you until you get there. Because I had people who held that belief in me when I couldn't hold it for myself. We can do a lot of this work on our own, but we didn't get here on our own. We're not healing things that happen to us in isolation. We don't heal in isolation either.